on how you got into oyster farming.
Well, I never thought I'd be an oyster aquaculture farmer at all because I'm very used to wild harvest oysters, tonging. Apalachicola Bay is very well known for that, and dragging for oysters, dredging oysters. But I was introduced a couple years ago because of the decline of Apalachicola Bay, and introduced by Aquaculture Environmental Institute, and it's actually been a great thing because that's the only oysters that really we've been able to provide for the restaurants that we've been selling to for years. And like I said, it's something that I never thought I would do. I'm used to wild harvest, and it's great to learn from many people, and everyone here has also learned how to do it as well, obviously, but it's a good thing, and I got introduced because of the decline that has happened from wild harvest. So.
All right, awesome. Elina, how did you fall into this?
Hi, everyone. I do have a different story because how we got into it, my family, we did not have anything to do with oysters before. We first started in 2013 when there was a bill passed and there was a new aquaculture park opened in Grand Isle. And we've always been interested in farming, especially my husband's side, my husband's family on that side. They're originally from Ecuador, and they've always done some kind of farming. It's either bananas or cacao beans. They've always done something. So when they moved here to the U.S. 20 years ago, they always wanted to continue that path. And so they kind of looked into what to do, some organic farming. So they kind of looked around. Is there a farm? Is there farmland that they can do organic farming? And they could not find anything in Louisiana that could be done organically because all the land is most of it is polluted. So they kind of looked into the sea, the water, and there was it kind of everything kind of went together that the park was just opened recently. So they were, okay, let's try this out. We have no idea how to do it, but what can go wrong, really? So they jumped into it, and we've been doing it since 2013 now, for 5 years, learning. Every year we have new challenges, but we're fighting through.
That's great. And so just because you're married to Boris, right? So how did you guys meet? How did you?
Well, we were pretty young, so we met online. my husband's from here, and we did this long-distance relationship for a while. He would come to visit me in Europe. I'm from Latvia. That's a small country in the northern part of Europe. We have access to sea. We have Baltic Sea, but we do not have any oysters. So actually, my first ever first oyster experience was here in Louisiana from our own farm. That was the first oyster I ever tasted. And yeah, well, we did that, and then I just moved here about 3 years ago. So I've been actively being thrown into the oyster farming, but I love every second of it. It's really, really great.
Awesome, thank you. So I guess what would be great to paint the picture of is, a lot of what's exciting about oysters is that ecology plays such a huge role in how they're grown and what their flavor profiles are. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the area where your farms are situated, and where you guys are farming, and explain a little bit about the ecology behind the flavor profile of the oysters.
Okay. Well, we are from Caminada Bay, Grand Isle. It's, I think, legendary place for oysters, and we carry all of that in our oysters. All of the good things that float through our oysters, we got it. It's really delicious. If you've ever tasted Louisiana oysters, you probably know them. Grand Isle. They have very, very flavorful oysters. Ours have some kind of butter sweetness to them, and they are sometimes characterized by even floral notes. It's really delicious. We are right there, the fourth tent. If you haven't gotten to us yet, you gotta do it and see for yourself.
Cool. Yeah, TJ.
The oysters that we have from Apalachicola Bay, being we're a very shallow bay, we have the wind direction means a lot, whether we get the salt from the Gulf or if the river's high, but it's always a great mixture. And no matter what, whether there's still a lot of river water and there's not a lot of saltiness, you still have this, just like she was saying, a sweet flavor in the end. There's no hard aftertaste. Your aftertaste is sweetness. And the Indian Lagoon oysters, being that we're close to a pass, Indian Pass, just the tide comes in with salt, and you have a salty flavor mixed with the sweetness, and you can't beat it. And there's not a lot of pollution at all in our bay. I mean, we're really lucky. We live in we only have one red light in our whole county, so I mean, it's not a lot of pollution. And I can only see a couple houses from where I catch oysters, and one of the houses is our oyster house. So it's hard to beat Apalachicola Bay oysters, and Grand Isle oysters are probably my favorite Louisiana oysters that I've ever had out of all Louisiana. So the sweetness mixed with the salt is just hard to beat.
Awesome. So with growing oysters, what's kind of different about them? And there's not many things that you can grow like this. You don't have to use water. The water's already there. You don't have to feed them because they're getting fed by the seas, the Gulf. So, the only hard part about it is that it's a lot of labor-intensive work. So maybe you could talk a little bit about, your day-to-day. When you wake up in the morning, what's a normal day for you farming? What is it like growing oysters? Maybe you could just describe a little bit about that day-to-day process.
Being your lady, I'm gonna let you go first, but I can't wait for fall. So
right, I agree. I so agree. Yeah, well, we spend all the time outside. You would imagine that our lease is quite deep, so we can't get there on a porch or walk there. We have to use a boat. We have to go there by boat, and we have to align the dates with the weather when we're harvesting, because if it's too windy, if it's too stormy, we can't get out there. So we have to work with the distributor and just plan ahead about the days when we can harvest. And so yeah, when we start on the farm early in the morning, of course, that's the farmer's life. We wake up early and then we go to the farm. Our commute is 3 hours because we live in Baton Rouge, so that's quite the journey. So we work early in the morning and we harvest, and then we just work on them on the shore once we get all the bags. Packaging and shipping to the distributor. Do you want to add something? How's your schedule looks like?
Well, we don't always leave early in the morning because of tides or winds and things like that, but it's what makes it great is that every day we get to be out in the water. And my friend, which is helping me show today, Wally Medley, we talk to the seagulls, we talk to the oysters. I mean, it's just great being out in Mother Nature. And here in
Do you have dolphins?
We have dolphins every day swim by the boat, and we can hear the Gulf of Mexico crashing on the beach on the other side of Indian Pass Peninsula. So, if it's successful, which that's what it's meant to be, successful, I hope, then it's great to know that I can go every day and be out in Mother Nature and make a living. So, yeah, I mean, I love being out on the water. There's nothing better than that. So, but it's hard work. Farming's not easy. Everybody's like, they think it's easy. It's not easy. It's tough work for anybody that's on the water, dealing with the wind and the tides and all. So.
Well, yeah, and speaking of that, you know, one of my questions was really, have you had a major setback? I know that the Gulf has had some challenges as well over the years, but you know, do you have a story in mind of a time that was really difficult, or you had a really tough setback that you had to overcome?
You've been in business since 2013, a lot longer than I have of farming, so.
I guess our most major setbacks could be the weather. We have not experienced any major storms yet, but they're always there. We sometimes cannot harvest because of bad weather. Other than that, we also grow our oysters from seed. We get the seed from labs, and sometimes I don't want to talk bad about anyone, but we sometimes do not have enough seed, that we cannot get enough to produce all year long. So we would have some kind of breaks into our supply. So that is, I guess, something that kind of slows our progress. We would like to push our oysters all year long, but sometimes we just cannot because we do not have enough seed to grow them. That is something that we are dealing with.
Yeah, that's the same problem we're having, especially the weather. There's days, and especially during winter time when the tides are severely low and you have possibilities of oysters freezing, and then you might have to drop your baskets to the bottom of the water. Weather's one of your biggest ordeals, and dealing with baby oysters, small, like sand. I mean, that's very difficult, and I mean, they're so precious. I mean, one basket can hold hundreds of thousands of oysters, and it's just a tough thing to deal with. But I think weather is the hardest thing.
And speaking of, you know, baskets and gear, maybe you could talk, you know, for some of us who don't even really know how oysters are grown, just walk through a little bit about how you grow them and the kind of gear that you use. It'd be great.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see
Go
it.
for it. No.
I use the Australian long line system, which I was introduced to from the Aquaculture Environmental Institute, and they're stretched out on lines with PVC poles, and there's clips that you can rise them up or down. Mm-hmm. They're not floating cages. We look forward to using floating cages in the future, but they're small baskets, mainly about 12 millimeter sizes is what we use the most. And where we work our oysters, it's only 3 feet of water. So most of the time they're underwater, unless I was just saying about the winter tides. But we strictly use long line at this time. And we've only been a year and a half into this, and we're hopefully going to do floating cages in the next year. So.
Yeah, unlike this oyster farm, we used floating cages. It means that they're basically huge cages, and they're suspended on the first foot of the water by big inflated. What would you call them? Platoons? Tubes. Yeah, they're holding on top of the water by huge tubes. And how it goes is that there's room for 4 or 6 oyster bags inside, and when we harvest, we just take the huge cage on the boat, and then we just take out the bags of oysters, and each bag holds about 250 oysters, and that's what we take on to processing. The cage goes back in the water. Usually the cages are tied in a line, about 10 cages in a line. That's how we do it with the floating cages.
Awesome, great. So we talked a little bit about ecology. We talked a little bit about how you guys grow and some of the challenges you faced. What about, and you guys did mention on it a little bit about what you love about your job. So maybe you could elaborate on some of the favorite moments that you've had, or what you love the most about being on the water and oystering.
You like to go first?
Sure. Well, my profession is I'm a translator, so I work on a computer all the time, inside my room, four walls all the time. So it's going out on the farm is quite different. It's you got to be in the nature. You have all these amazing sunsets and sunrises and nature and wildlife surrounding you at all times. So you can't really beat that. Anything that you do outside, that you really love nature, that you can't beat that. That is really, really an amazing job that you can enjoy your job, and you also have to you can be in an awesome environment that you really like. I think that's the best part for me, just being out there every day. You can't beat that.
You can't. Like I said earlier, just being out in Mother Nature is just a great thing. But I guess one of my favorite things is when I see an oyster that's oblong or doesn't look easy to shuck that I don't want to send to the market, I get to throw that on ice and eat it for lunch. I love that. I mean, they're a hot commodity nowadays. It's not like it used to be at all as far as just eating oysters whenever you want. I mean, I grew up just, after I was able to drive, have an ice chest with oysters in the back of my truck, especially in the wintertime, Thanksgiving, and nowadays it's crazy. I see a weird looking oyster and I want to throw it on ice to eat it for lunch. Most of the time I eat it right away, and Wally's like, no, put it on ice, it'll be better. Trust me. But that's besides Mother Nature and doing what growing oysters is what I grew up doing, or my family has grown up selling oysters, being in the seafood business, just part of that. And then, just being able to be out in the water and then eat an oyster every now and then is just, can't beat that life, especially like being right here right now. So.
Awesome. And speaking of family, it's a tough job and it's long hours. How does you cope with family and balancing life? Is it hard?
Well, in our case, everyone in our family is involved. We go to the farm, me, my husband, and my father-in-law. It's the three of us all the time. We work together from sunrise to sunset. So we go to events together like now. So it's just a family affair. It's all that we're doing everything together, and I think that's pretty great. I really enjoyed that part too.
Working with family is always tough, but in the end, everything that I know about what I'm doing right now, not just farming, I'm just saying seafood in the water, maritime, I learned from my dad, and I learned from other family members and things like that. So it's passed down, and it's just everybody enjoys it. Like everybody's together, like your family today at this event, and it's great to do that.
Awesome, great. Well, just a couple last questions here before we open it up to anybody else who might have something. But if you could put a pairing with your oyster, what would it be? Do you have a favorite drink that you love to drink, or something that you love to eat with your oysters, or a garnish?
Yeah, like you said, we also set aside the big honkers, or the ones that can't go to the market, and those make the best recipes. We love to make oyster spaghetti. Some parsley, garlic, butter. That's the best. And also, of course, ceviche. And we also grill oysters. You can't go wrong. It's all good.
Yeah, it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I have to try both of those. And conkers, I'm going to use that, the word for the oysters we throw in the ice chest now.
Okay.
But a lime. I was introduced to just sprinkling a little bit of lime on the oyster and eating it raw. But besides, I mean, anyway, I like oysters raw, stewed, and nude. I don't care.
Good deal. Last question I have for you guys is, you're both kind of young in the business, but if you could think about those first days, is there anything that you would tell yourself now that you know about the job? Is there any advice that you would give to your few years younger self getting into this business?
I gotta think about this one.
My biggest thing is, like we've been talking about so much, is the weather. And like there's a storm right now just south of us. And from learning from family and all that, just been in the seafood business is planning ahead. Like right when you get into it, planning ahead, because you never know what next week's gonna bring,
Yeah, I guess I could agree with that, but I think we're done pretty well. Like I don't think I would take anything back and change anything. Like we have our challenges every year, but we just step up and face them and just change something if we have to. Just have to fight and be
living day by
strong.
day. Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much. This has been really wonderful just to get into your brains and pick it. And we've been enjoying your oysters all day. So just knowing a little bit of background about where they come from is so special. Is there anything that anybody would like to ask? Or yeah, please in the back.
I'm just curious how big of the cages you say go up to like 250 to a bag. How big are those cages, out of curiosity?
So the question was, how big are the cages,
Yes.
really? Yeah.
Can I use European measurements? They're about a meter long, and they're very heavy. We use a winch to pull them into the boat, so we would not be able to use just our hands. We need some kind of machinery, winch, and they're about the floating. The floats themselves are. It's hard to explain, but they're good size. They're good size. You can come to our tent. I'm gonna show you some pictures. I'm sorry I can't explain it too well, but they're about meter times meter. So I would guess any conversion, and can anyone do a conversion?
A meter is 39.5 inches.
There you go. It's about 3 by 3 feet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Perfect.
Great. Any other questions for Rudy? Yeah.
You said you can't wait for the fall to come. Why is that?
So the question is, why can't they wait for fall to come?
The weather.
Humidity is hot. I just can't wait. I mean, fall is really here, but I mean the actual feeling fall, I cannot wait to have the daytime feel like 72, 75 degrees. It's just been a hot summer, but every summer's hot, right? It just during the moment it feels worse.
Yeah, we work in bikinis. Well, I do. So I really can't wait for the time to cool down a little bit. It's been really hot.
Great. Any other questions?
I do have one more.
Okay.
So they say you can, the oyster season is any month with an R in it. Do you guys harvest during the summer months? But, in the months with no R in it?
So the question is debunking the R months and whether you can eat oysters outside of those months and when you guys harvest.
We both harvest. I'm pretty sure you harvest. Okay, we harvest oysters year round, and due to FDA standards and all that, it's safe to eat oysters year round. The compliances that they make us go through with the refrigeration and all year round is safe to eat raw oysters if your health is willing to take raw oysters. So.
That is a myth that comes from a long time ago when there was no refrigeration. So in the months when it was the hottest, the months without the R, that's when you would not eat the oysters. But now it really does not apply because we have we have to follow strict rules, and you just have to get the oysters to the cooler within an hour, so you can enjoy fresh and oysters all year long.
Thank you.
Awesome. From the back?
Yeah. What about so I've eaten oysters in the summer in those months, those are months, and there's like some nasty spunk in it. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, so
What is that?
summertime, how do they taste different in the summer versus the winter?
That's oysters reproducing. They're spawning, so they have a spawny taste, which isn't good at all. You're right. It's horrible. Yeah. And sometimes you can actually see it on the meat and all that. They're really milky looking, but diploid or a wild oyster mainly are the ones that are spawning, obviously, and they'll have that milky flavor, and it's horrible. Yeah, I don't even like them fried.
Yeah, well, we have two different oysters, basically. That's very, very basically saying diploids and triploids. What you farm, I guess you two triploids.
Yes.
I guess the easiest way to say it, imagine a seedless watermelon and a regular watermelon. The triploid oysters that do not spawn during the summer are like seedless watermelons. So they just keep growing and they do not spawn. So you can enjoy them. They don't lose their meatiness, their plumpness. So they're plump and meaty all year long. So that's in very simple words, the difference.
So make sure you ask for a triploid oyster as in the summer. Great. All right. Any other questions from you?
But your Apalachicola area, right? Do you see any difference between the East Bay and the Apalachicola? Say they're about
Apalachicola is a shallow bay, so depending on which way the wind is blowing will make the oysters saltier or fresh. If that's what you were talking about, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so if you're,
A little bit east of the
yeah, the East Bay, yes sir. But yeah, East Bay, if it's blowing from the east, those oysters get more Gulf water, which make them more salty. And if it blows from the west, then Indian Lagoon and or St. Vincent Island, St. Vincent Sound, they get more salt. But it's a wind-driven bay because it's so shallow. I mean, your average depth is probably no more than 10 feet in Apalachicola Bay. So one day it can blow 10 miles an hour from a direction, it changed the whole flavor of the oyster. There's not really scallops in Apalachicola Bay. I mean, towards Lanark Village, which is way far east. Yeah, Port St. Joe, which is not part of our estuary system, has bay scallops, but scallops really can't survive due to the fresh water that when we do have the river flowing with enough of fresh water. So, if, in between Carabel and Lanark, Carabel and Alligator Point, scallops, being they swim, they come in and out of there from the Gulf of Mexico. But besides that, and then, yes, sir. That answered your question.
Great, thank you. All right, I think that's our time. So we'll let you get back to the booths, but I want to thank you guys so much. We're going to do another round of this, around 6, with a couple other oyster farmers. So if you're interested in seeing a few more, please come back and grab a drink in between. But thank you guys so much, and I just want to let you know, I run a little bit of a blog called Lady Oyster, and you guys can, if you're interested in farm stories and learning more about farmers, you can find it online, theladyoyster.com, and we'd love to get you guys on the site as well with your stories. So thank you so much, and
Thank you.
and thank you all for listening.
Thank you.